Hello, everyone. Hi, and welcome, finally, to the review of the Woobats' third ever season in draft. And this has been my toughest season yet. Not just because the coaches have gotten stronger, even though they have. Not just because the power level of Pokemon has gone up, even though they have. No, this has been my most difficult season because I've been battling two of my strongest opponents all season long. Anyone that's been around since I started draft will know exactly who one of those opponents is. But stick around because the second opponent is one whose ass I was kicking the first two seasons. But damn if bro didn't hit back hard this season. This video was pretty tough to make, not because of time or the usual life gets in the way stuff, but because opponent one was still kicking my ass even in the off season. That opponent is, of course, me. Writing the script for this portion has been such a pain. I think this is the third, fourth rewrite, and at least my fifth attempt at recording it. I just don't want to sound like a broken record. But at the same time, I feel like I need to be honest and hold myself accountable for what I'm doing wrong. And these end of season reviews are a great place to do that. The fact that I've been talking about similar mistakes and issues for 3 seasons now should be setting off alarm bells. To be honest, as frustrating as it is to make those same mistakes over and over, I've got autism and ADHD. These things happen in all aspects of my life. And it takes time to come up with and put into place systems that minimize these issues. I don't think I'll ever be able to eradicate them, but there are ways to make them happen less. I don't want to spend too long going over this yet again, but I honestly think I just got complacent with things. I got lax with my checking and my QA. I guess because the genning had gone well most of last season and seemingly early on this season. So I didn't check absolutely everything every single time. And then the infamous no beat up match happened. My week 6 match with Evney. My careless error with the genning of my Whimsicott, which was 1000% my fault, wasn't the only issue. Out of paranoia, I checked that week 6 Whims with a fine-tooth comb, and I spotted an absolutely massive issue. Despite the process supposedly genning perfect IVs, unless otherwise stated, it wasn't. I hadn't been checking the IVs of my Gen Mons, and after checking Pokemon I'd used in previous battles, I realized this issue had been going on all season long. I'm pretty sure I'd been going into every battle with a random stat, or in some cases 2, not at 31 IVs, on, I'd have to guess, every single Pokemon. I've been trading back some of those Gen Mons as I ran out of trade fodder, so I don't have them all to check, and to be honest, I don't think it matters at this point which were affected and where. The point is that I let it happen in the first place. ADHD is a bitch for that. I rush boring tasks, make excuses not to do certain parts of them, so I can get to the fun stuff. Get that dopamine rush as fast as possible. So, round 1, battle of self versus self. I'm going to call a no contest, with a rematch scheduled for Season 4. It's something I think I struggled with late on in Season 1, and for parts in Season 2. It's definitely a battle I'm always going to be fighting, and something I'm really disappointed I let slip in the first half of this season. The main thing is, I'm aware of it, and even though I slip up from time to time, I keep working to be better at it. Like I said, I'm never going to be perfect with these things. I'm always going to make mistakes. I just need to be constantly improving. There is, however, a round 2 to this battle, though. And this has been one hell of a long, drawn-out fight. This actually started around about a year ago, when I decided I really wanted to get into competitive Pokemon. Following advice on how to improve from That's a Plus One, I set off on a mission to find my playstyle. Testing different teams, different Pokemon to see which resonated with me and which I felt comfortable using and building a team around. I tried Trick Room, I tried Balance, I tested a ton of different Pokemon and different teams. But after a few weeks and a ton of frustration, I settled on a team built around Murkrow, Goldengo, and Garchomp. You'll know this team. I've mentioned it so many times. This really was the team that I think solidified my enjoyment of competitive Pokemon. And ever since then, I've considered myself a Tailwind Hyper Offense player, because that team in particular was very fast paced, used Tailwind to go even faster, and importantly, control the speed tiers. I went through the exact same process again when it came to building my team to take the Liverpool Regionals. After much practice and so many failed attempts at building a Baxcalibur Snow team, I settled on a team built around Tornadus, Fluttermane, and Chi-Yu. Because, of course, I'm a Tailwind Hyper Offense player. Once again, that team was very fast and used Tornadus to control not only the speed, but in this case also the weather. Fast forward to the end of last season, which had overall been quite a successful one for me. We finished 5-4, made it to the playoffs, where we lost in the first round to eventual winner, Evil Otter. After much analysis, I decided the team was good. It was almost there, but it wasn't quite my playstyle. So in a bid to improve on this, I vowed to build a squad for this season that did fit my playstyle. Tailwind, Hyper Offense, right? Well, the core of this team isn't Tailwind Hyper Offense. It has some Hyper Offense elements to it, but at its heart, it's not that type of team. So how did I end up in this position? I wanted to make a Tailwind Hyper Offense team, right? Well, no. I actually wanted to build a team that fit my play style. And this squad was so close. Let me explain. I'm definitely an aggressive player. I think we've all seen that with some of my decision making. And like I said in my Season 2 review, I don't like my teams to be reactive. I want to be dictating the play. Go fast, hit hard, and end the battles as quickly as possible. But there are two things wrong in this assessment and approach. Firstly, assuming you can always dictate play. This is draft. You have to have a backup plan in every single team you build. It sounds fairly obvious, but I think it's something I've been overlooking, and it's been costing me matches, especially later in seasons when other coaches have figured out their teams. I think I do a fairly good job prepping my draft, so I'm kind of able to hit the ground running. But other coaches, they draft mons they're perhaps not overly familiar with, or they go on feel with their draft, so it takes them a few matches to get going. Secondly, the phrase "go fast" should have been "go first." If we take another look at my Liverpool Regionals team, firstly, let's acknowledge the meta call, the fact that it was all special attackers because, well, fuck you, Incineroar. What my favourite part was, of course, that Life Orb Walking Wake and Sash Chi combo. I also love the tech for the Torn Mirror and my Trick Room counter-ish, the Amoonguss Farigiraf combo. This let me set Trick Room and eventually have Farigiraf next to that Sash Chi, because this was no ordinary Farigiraf. With 76 Modest, a Throat Spray boost, and Chi on the field, that Farigiraf put in some work. And it was so incredibly tanky, despite all that offensive power, that it would very often live long enough to reset Trick Room. This technically is go fast, but let's not get into semantics. It's more go first. It's also reactive and a backup plan. Hell, looking at it again, this may be the best team I've ever built. Going back to draft, reviewing this squad and this season made me go back over all the teams I'd ever built and played. I think Arceus for Showdown. While, yeah, on the surface, they look like Tailwind Hyper Offense teams. The parts I enjoyed using were not necessarily those super speedy, traditional Hyper Offense pieces. They were the surprise elements, the tech, the EV spreads that people didn't see coming. Things like the Goldengo on that first team, which was an incredibly bulky spec set. It was designed to barely KO Fluttermane with a Shadow Ball and to barely outspeed Dragapult in Tailwind. Everything else was bulk. I didn't absolutely need to have Murkrow set Tailwind. That Burb as well was max attack adamant with a Life Orb. It was more than capable of picking up a turn 1 KO with Brave Bird, or just chunking something to let Dengo KO would make it rain. Then turn 2, haze away the stat drops. Dengo was ridiculously bulky, but still hit hard without any setup. I could sit here and talk all day about the crazy plays you can make with that Murkrow Dengo combo, but you're not here for that. Point is that Tailwind was the enabler, not the definer. So while I've been convinced all this time that I'm a Tailwind Hyper Offense player, simply because I like to use Prankster Tailwind and fairly fast mons, I feel like I'm actually an aggressive, bulky offense player that likes to use Prankster support to enable that. Be it Tailwind from Wims, Torn, Murkrow, to enable me to EV less speed. Screens, Wisp from Sableye or Grimmsnarl to enable me to add more power. The parts of the teams that I've had success with and most enjoyed have not been that go fast, hit hard. Of course, Die is a hell of a lot of fun, don't get me wrong. They've been the mons that have brought about the huh and oh shit moments. Pokemon like Farigiraf, Goldengo, Annihilate. Hell, throw in Volcarona from last season too. These guys have stat spreads and move pools that let me use them in creative and occasionally unorthodox ways that take my opponent by surprise. They also happen to be awkward speed tier mons that get activated and enabled by those faster or prankster teammates. These are the mons that I enjoy using the most. These are the Pokemon that define my playstyle. I think my tendency towards making aggressive plays and my preference for Tailwind as my speed control overshadowed what the essence of each team was. And in these 3 seasons of draft has made me kind of narrow my options and end up building teams and strategies, especially later in the season, that I'm not all that comfortable playing. It's definitely not something you want to be doing in a league as stacked and competitive as this. Round 2 in the battle of self versus self was definitely won by Dark Ronin, but I absolutely won the end of season rematch. Deciding round coming very soon. To understand the second opponent I found so incredibly difficult to overcome, we have to look at two things. Firstly, Game Freak's love of percent chances, and secondly, a match from the second draft league I joined temporarily. Competitive Pokemon is a gambler's paradise. So much of it can come down to luck and chance. For starters, every damaging move has a range of damage it can do, hence the term damage roll. Ideally, when EVing your Pokemon, you'll have a specific matchup in mind, and when checking the damage calculator, you'll EV it to be a minimum 100%. But that's not always possible, especially when you don't know how tanky your opponent will make their mons. Combine this with the fact that many Pokemon rely on moves that aren't 100% accurate, and every time you click the button, you're essentially gambling. Throw in secondary effects, crit chance, and you get the picture. If luck is on your side, you'll feel like Arceus with a steroid injection. If it's not, then it'll leave you wondering why you didn't join Snorlax and spend the day stuffed full of snacks and sleeping. This season for me has been more of the latter than the former. The first few weeks went pretty well in the luck department. Seemed fairly balanced with a missed air slash here and there, helping me to a 3-2 record by week 5. Even if a few flinches along the way made it a bumpy ride. Week 6, however, things started taking a turn for the worst. Not just because of the Women's Cup mix-up, but this is also where Game 2 of my second league happened. I'll just roll the footage and you can see. This was swiftly followed by the Sash Fluttermane game versus Chris, which was absolutely lost because A, he played around my Trick Room incredibly well, and B, I forgot it was Sash Fluttermane. But this also had an amazing example of the damage rolls / not knowing your opponent's sets gambage. Game 2, I really needed to KO his Flygon. Hornleech did about 45% in game 1, which I assumed was a low roll. So I gambled on Helping Hand boosted Hornleech being a 50-50 or slight roll in my favour. But it ended up living on like 5 HP. The match where RNG's really kicked me in the nuts, though, was week 8 versus Draco. And honestly, this completely broke my spirit this season. I really did my prep for this match. I wanted a fun team to take Draco by surprise, but also one that was pretty safe into his squad. Turn 1, I misread the fake out. Hell, I was shocked he didn't fake out. But he was never going to close combat my Monkey Dory. So the Hydreigon switch was fairly safe, and I really wanted to preserve the Sash on Monkey Dory. That -2 close combat, though, was never going to KO that Terra Electric Hydreigon. We were at 132 HP. At most, that close combat does 73. With the defense drop, we Oko Sneasler. U-turn chips us for roughly another 40, but we're living on 20 HP. He's got Azu, Spiritomb, Thwacky left. Do we win? Maybe, maybe not. Depending on the damage roll of that U-turn, a -2 Aquajet may or may not KO from that range. But importantly, it disincentivizes the belly drum play. And if we live and get off a Terror Blast, Azu takes over 50% and cannot belly drum. In game 2, the crit high horsepower from Donphan may not have looked like it mattered. But, depending on investment, it did. -2 attack, my +1 defense, with a lot of HP and defensive investment, it was a roll if it was anything other than max attack adamant. Sums up my season. Never lucky. RNGesus is honestly the toughest opponent I think I've ever battled. You'd think practicing versus Tommy Hacks week in, week out, season 2 would have kind of desensitized me to it, but it really hasn't. It helped me to learn to play around and even game plan for Hacks a little. But getting crit through stat changes, your opponent never missing Blizzard in the sun, it's the most tilting thing because it makes you wonder why you even play the game properly. Why bother changing the weather on a snow team if your opponent's just going to hit Blizzard anyway? Why bother boosting your defense and dropping your opponent's attack if they're just going to crit and ignore it all? Why go to all that effort? RNGesus is a son of a bitch, and he makes you doubt your life choices. But you know what? Luck is temporary, talent is permanent. The first 5 weeks of the season, I played some of the best Pokemon I think I ever have. And if I hadn't burnt myself out in anger at the game, thanks to results kind of going my way, I could still have made playoffs. Had I beaten Weens in week 9. I don't regret my decision to drop out though. I needed some time off to reassess and recharge and just do something else for a couple of weeks. Overall, I think, once again, this season has been one of improvement. Take Hacks and my lack of checking out of it, and I had a good shot at being 5-4 or even 6-3 and pushing the top 4 spots. Maybe even getting our first playoff win. But that's the way the cookie crumbles, unfortunately. Those things happened and we've finished 3-6. And even without the hacks and lack of checking, that could still have happened. It's the nature of the game we know and love, the nature of draft, and to be honest, just how my aggressive playstyle goes sometimes. I don't think I'll ever change that. I think I just need to, as the kids say, get good. Let's talk about something a little bit more positive, shall we? As I said earlier, this squad, I think, was very, very close to an ideal squad for me and the way I like to play the game. Drafting Lucario was the mistake, but I love that one. And it was luckily solved with trades. But that 7 of Wims, Ape, Ogre, Shocks, Delphox, Hydreigon, Clawitzer was very, very close. And I'm honestly sad that I took so long to recognize that Lucario plus Ambipom was a mistake, and B, didn't get to have the deep run with the squad that I think it deserved. So let's take a look at each of the Mons one by one, starting with the mistakes and their replacements. Ambipom, I don't think was a mistake, really. The Funny Monkey just kind of got tied a bit too tightly to the strat I wanted to try with Lucario, and unfortunately paid the price. At 6 points with its toolkit, it's really good value. Technician and Skill Link, two very good abilities. Triple Axle and Fury Swipes take pretty good advantage of both, to be honest. And it has a plethora of moves that get boosted by Technician. What I wanted it for, though, was support capabilities with Fake Out, Taunt, T-Wave, Fast Weather, and, importantly for the strat I wanted, Upper Hand. I had this crazy idea that if people could Weakness Policy E-Speed a Terra Normal Dragonite next to an Upper Hand user, I could potentially do the same with Lucario. What I failed to take into account was that Lucario's defensive stats are a hell of a lot worse than Dragonite's. So it takes a hell of a lot more damage from that initial hit. Lucario not needing the Terra and having multiple priority options to pull this strategy off would have been amazing if its stats had allowed. Lucario also just doesn't really fit the team typing wise. I kind of talked myself into it being a decent counter to fairies for Ape. But the second fighting type on the field, or switching one fighting type for another, even if Lucario doesn't take super effective from that fairy hit, it was just never going to work. And Ape was always going to win out when I had to choose between the two. Design-wise, Lucario was always going to be a favourite of mine. I absolutely adore it. But competitively, it's always going to need the right team, the right situation to shine. Never say never. I think I'm always going to triple check if I can use him on a squad, but this time just wasn't it. The replacements were Monkey Dory and Hisuian Zorua. Zorua was 5,000% a meme pick. I just wanted once to disguise it as an Annihilate and have someone throw a Shadow Ball into it. That would have been so cool. It does, however, have some legit support tools though. Bit of Malice to lower attack, Icy Wind for speed control, Burning Jealousy for punishing setup, Snarl, Wisp, Taunt, Trick. It's a very good 1-point pickup. And definitely one I'll look at again. Monkey Dory though. Maybe if I'd had it from the start, my opinion would be different. But I think it's a one-season wonder. Right team, right coach. Weens made this thing look incredible. But for me, 10 points is too much. Frisk is a really useful ability, especially on a Fake Out mon. And it has the stats and move pool to be a nuisance. But in every situation I wanted to use it is a Sash Hog, narrowing my options for the rest of the team. Like I said, if I'd had it from the start, or I'd built a squad with that in mind, it could have been different. But one of the ways I wanted to use it was to lead it next to Whims to have the faster Fake Out, letting me run something other than Covert Cloak on Whims, which most of the time was going to be, wait for it, Sash. You see where that's a problem. I'd definitely look at it again, but I think there are better value options for what Monkey Dory wants to do. On to the mainstays of the squad. Hydreigon. Hydreigon is like, it's almost good. Almost. Its typing really holds it back for me. I hate that 4 times weakness to fairy. I don't know why. There aren't really that many strong fairy types in draft. But it felt like a Terra Hog. And I struggled to use it effectively because of that. It has some amazing tools. Roar, Tailwind, Snarl, Thunderwave. I could quite easily have used it as a bulky support, similar to how people use Iron Jugulars. But I really wanted it to be an offensive piece, relying on its natural bulk to keep it around. Against Otter, it put in some serious work. That Terror Mind game was so much fun and up there with my favourite moments from the entire season. But for a 12-point Mon, I just didn't get the value out of it because it felt too matchup dependent. At its current cost, I don't think I'll ever draft it again. Maybe I'd consider it a few points lower, but even then, I'm not too sure. Sandy Shocks. Sandy Shocks, I absolutely love. It's probably my favourite Paradox Pokemon design-wise. And it surprised me with its versatility and ability to take a hit. It was in 5 out of the 8 squads for the season, and I'm pretty sure the 3 it didn't come, I had an idea of how to use it in the matchup. That week 3 match versus the Delmise, though, it really popped off. But I love the fact that with its natural speed and special attack stat, I could use it to unlock potential in other Mons like Delphox and Hydreigon. I think I've used a booster speed set every time to make sure it was the fastest thing in Team Preview, but the range of EV spreads outside of that was nutty. Absolutely, I'll draft this thing again. Ogerpon. Ogerpon, I think, has untapped potential. It was really good, but I think it's a strange Mon that, because of Follow Me, and this goes for all the Ogerpon forms really, because of Follow Me, you feel almost forced to run it as more of a support when it's got so much offensive potential. It was second on my team for kills, but it also died in every game it appeared in, which was really funny to me. It's absolutely a top Mon. Even the rock form. It's absolutely tip top. It has the stats, move pool, ability, typing, to be a real threat offensively and very annoying and tough to deal with support. I just don't think it was the right call on this squad. I would definitely consider picking it up in the future, but I would have to do a better job of planning to have it on the team or adjusting because it was available for my pick. Oh, Whimsicott. Whimsicott is an incredible Pokemon. It can do so much. And there's tech in that Mon I wanted to use, but never got a chance to. That's how good Whimsicott is. It's absolutely everything I would want in a Prankstamon. It's faster than every other Prankstamon out there, so no matter what, it's going first. And because of that, you have to think twice about firing a taunt into it, because it also has taunt. The offensive and defensive support this thing has is absolutely ridiculous. There's even stall tactics you can use with moves like Poison Powder, Leech Seed. I'm not sure it's the best Mon in draft, like some say, because it can be shut down with a taunt if your opponent plays it right. Its defensive stats also aren't the best, so it's tough to make it stick around more than a couple of turns. So, in my opinion, it's actually pretty balanced compared to others that are up in those 15, 14 point tiers. Yes, it's tough to prep for, in that you don't know exactly what it's going to do when it hits the field. But there are a lot of good draft Mons like that. It has, however, very, very quickly risen to be one of my absolutely favourite Pokemon to use. 15 out of 10 would definitely use it again. Clowitzer. My God, this mon took me by surprise. I drafted it simply as a matchup dependent mon because I couldn't think of another fairly bulky water type that would work. I did find it quite difficult to position because of that really weird speed tier, though it's got surprisingly decent bulk, even more so than I thought. Letting it live a hit or two to get the one big KO you really wanted to take in some matches, or to set up and be the sweeper you wanted to be in others. Where it shines is in that ability combined with the 120 base special attack. Keep in mind, Ogerpon has 120 base attack. Yeah. For 5 points, this was absolutely insane value. And while it did only really truly shine in one match where I actually failed to use it the way I wanted to, it's 1000% going to be on my radar for future drafts. The Angry Monkey. Annihilate. Ape is just, well, Ape. It does what it does, and it does it well. I think people kind of underestimate what it can do without those Rage Fist stacks. It has some good coverage. It's decently bulky, and with the right support, can put in work even if it doesn't get beaten up. It doesn't live and die by the success and power of Rage Fist. The trouble is, your opponents focus hard on it during prep, which is a good and bad thing. Don't get me wrong. If they're over-respecting Ape, they're not respecting something else. But it means you have to get creative with how you use the angriest of monkeys. I think I managed that for the most part. Where Follow Me was on the table, I used that to my advantage, getting off a bulk up or laying down some immediate damage. In matches where the lead was obviously going to be very anti-Ape, I found potential counterplay. I honestly think the YouTube channel might get a new mascot because I've always been an Ape believer, but I think I might now have become Annihilate's strongest soldier. At least in draft. My favourite mon this season, though, was definitely Delphox. I think draft has also turned me into a psychic type gym leader. God of War Season 1, Season 2, and now Delphox took that a step further. The move pools for most psychic types is incredible. And Delphox enabled me to try out so many funky little strategies. I also liked its typing. It has more weaknesses technically than God of War did, but it also has way more resists. Key amongst those being Fairy and Psychic, which Annihilate really doesn't like dealing with. Its stat line is great for what I wanted to do, especially that speed tier. In Tailwind, I could bulk it out or make it even more offensive. Outside of Tailwind, I could make it fast and hard to deal with. I've kind of struggled with my fire types in previous seasons. Season 1, I didn't even draft one. Season 2, I had Ninetales and Canto Moltres, what were mostly support options. I hoped Moltres would be a bit more offensive, but didn't quite work. What Delphox gave me was a way to do both. Sometimes at the same time. Both offense and support in a single mon. And my opponent having to respect both. Just played so well into how I wanted the team to function. And for 4 points, the Lil Foxy was an absolute bargain. For sure, we'll draft that one again. But there you have it. A season that started with so much promise, that included a lot of real highs, but will ultimately go down as one of wasted potential. And if I'm going to be really hard on myself, failure. I can't blame it all on hacks or a couple of mistakes. Ultimately, I made the mistakes, and they're best of 3 matches for a reason. We have opportunities to bounce back, but that really is easier said than done, especially against this level of competition. We are finally having a little bit of a break before season 4. I will, of course, be back for that. All of the content ideas I've been storing up will finally get made in this break, so keep an eye out for that. But if you're just here for the draft, enjoy not having to put up with my complaining for a little while, and I'll see you all soon.